I'd like to take some time to talk about our protagonist, who is tentatively named Angel. And one of the things is in Devastated Dreams, we have the same basic structure as Neverending Nightmares, in that you play through a series of levels, and each level is a nightmare, and so when you wake up, things can be different. So in some nightmares, Angel is pregnant, and in some nightmares she won't be pregnant, as you can sort of see in the trailer, and the demo sort of hints at that. And this was sort of an interesting thing. When I first pitched the game to the rest of the team, they were thinking, I was thinking like, oh, we're going to have this lumbering, waddling, pregnant woman, and it's going to be like super vulnerable and super slow, and the team was like, well, I didn't actually say that. I think I just said, the main character is going to be pregnant, and I'm like, will people really want to play as a pregnant main character all the time? Like, maybe she can be pregnant some of the time. I'm like, sure, yeah, that sounds good. Because, in my head, I was thinking, vulnerability, and that was something very important to a horror game. And I do believe that, but I think to some extent, Neverending Nightmares really pushed that, and to some extent it was too much for some players. Like, some people just couldn't stand the sprint, and how limiting the asthma was, which was a key mechanic to the game. But I can certainly see, if you're not really into exploring the world, that it can be a little limiting or annoying or whatever. The game certainly was not for everyone, and it had a very sort of, we had a very challenging and very sort of stark and difficult goal of communicating all these negative feelings. But with Devastated Dreams, we were able to go back to the drawing board and try and innovate and try and change some different things. So when the team was not super thrilled about the idea of this lumbering protagonist, I thought about it, and I think they were really right, because again, that was sort of a sticking point of the game, but also I feel like it's not entirely fair to the character. And so with Thomas, obviously his weakness was sort of forefront, and that was something sort of about me expressing my weaknesses. But with Angel, the one thing that I've seen, being with my wife, obviously, as she's gone through her pregnancy, is that it takes an amazing amount of strength. It's very difficult emotionally, physically, and all of that to carry a child. And I don't know, we've had discussions about like how pregnant is our main character, and I don't have a good answer, but she's not so far along that she can't be active, because if you look at the way the character plays, she actually is more capable than Thomas. She's a stronger character. She has the ability to fight and struggle rather than just succumb to the monsters. And even the sprint mechanic has been changed such that if she runs out of stamina, and she has more stamina than Thomas, instead of having to stop and catch her breath, she can walk, albeit it's a little slower, but she can walk to catch her breath, and then she can keep running. And I think this was really the right decision. Although, again, sort of my development was sort of the original idea was sort of colored by my perception of Neverending Nightmares, and sort of, I thought the vulnerability was like the key thing, and it was really important. And so as I was thinking about the game, I'm like, oh, how can we up that, and the idea of being even more vulnerable physically seemed really appealing. But I think, having the hindsight of releasing Neverending Nightmares and seeing how people react to it, I think vulnerability is important, but I think sort of limiting the player, as I did through Neverending Nightmares, is something that can be received, sort of mixed. Some people are okay with that, but if you push the frustration angle too far, even in the context of a horror game, it will turn off some horror game fans. And certainly I've been in that situation where I'm just like, this is too frustrating. Like, why is this so unforgiving? And so, I mean, to some extent, Neverending Nightmares, while the gameplay and the mechanics are in terms of the challenge, is very forgiving. The stamina mechanic is very unforgiving and not very player friendly. So, to some extent, Devastated Dreams is more player friendly, but I would make the argument that the player feels more vulnerable because the situation is something where a lot of people would be afraid. Like, I don't know, if you put me in the jungle at night with only a flashlight, like, I'm gonna crap my pants, right? Like, I don't really believe in monsters or ghosts or whatever, but like, oh my gosh, that would be very scary for me. That's one area that I think makes you feel more vulnerable. But I think the idea of pregnancy also is something that makes people feel very vulnerable, and at least that's something that I've seen in my own personal life. Like, when I drive with my pregnant wife, I think about, like, oh crap, I gotta drive extra carefully, I don't want to take any risks, because our child growing inside my wife is very vulnerable and fragile. I don't know. I mean, I've heard that they can be quite resilient, but I mean, I don't know, the idea of getting into a car accident, the airbag deploying and running into my wife's baby bump. I don't even like to think about that. And it's amazing that the Filipino culture with the aswang and preying on the pregnant women sort of, it's such a horrifying idea, and it really drills down, and really connects with me on a personal level in terms of my own fears. So, anyway, I think the player character is very vulnerable. I think we're creating something that's going to be even more horrifying than Neverending Nightmares, but we're trying to do it while giving the protagonist some strength and making her character a little more gamer friendly than Thomas in Neverending Nightmares, who was not at all gamer friendly, deliberately, but definitely that I can see where that would be a sticking point for some people. So anyway, thanks for watching.